I was very young when this happened, maybe 7 or 8 years old. Memories from that age are usually fuzzy, but this one stuck with me for reasons that became painfully clear. It was a school day, and rain had been pouring non-stop. After picking me up, my parents left for some fancy event, maybe a fundraiser or dinner party, I can't remember. They were supposed to come home that night, but the storm grew so violent that driving became dangerous. Instead, they stayed at a friend's place nearby. I remember their phone call, their repeated apologies for leaving me alone even though I insisted I'd be fine. My mom gave me strict instructions: lock all doors and windows, keep a light on, close the blinds. Basic safety stuff. At the time, I didn't grasp the seriousness. If anything, I was thrilled to have the house to myself. Unlimited snacks, no bed. I camped out on the living room couch, planning to follow her checklist right before bed. But eventually the sugar crash hit and I dozed off. I woke up hours later. The TV had turned itself off, and the house was freezing. Not just nighttime cold. Something felt off. Still half asleep, I remembered my mom's list and forced myself to check everything. Doors locked, blinds shut, windows sealed tight. Yet the chill lingered. I figured the storm must have knocked out the heat, and trudged upstairs to bed. That's when I realized how bad the storm had gotten. My bedroom faced outside, and rain hammered the window like fists. Thunder shook the walls. I wasn't scared of storms, but the noise kept me awake, along with something else. A strange creaking, like wood shifting. Not the usual storm sounds. Then lightning flashed, lighting up the room. The closet door was open. It hadn't been before. Something was in my room. I didn't scream, didn't think, just slipped out of bed and crept to the door. Every step feeling like miles. I bolted downstairs and hid under the dining table, shaking. That's when I heard footsteps, erratic, like someone stumbling down the stairs. They moved closer, stopping near the table. From beneath it, I saw bare, muddy feet. Cuts covered the legs, yellowed and grotesque. They dropped something, a wrench, and for a heart-stopping moment, I thought they'd bend down and see me. But they shuffled away. The front door opened and closed. I stayed hidden for what felt like forever. When I finally moved, I picked up the wrench, terrified my parents would find it. The next morning, I locked the door, crawled into bed, and pretended nothing happened. Years later, I told my parents. They barely believed me. That night left me with a fear of the dark that lasted years. Even now, I double-check every lock. Fast forward to my teenage years. I was 15, home alone on a rainy May night. My parents were out and I couldn't sleep. Rain always kept me awake. Desperate, I decided to walk in the park behind our house. It was safe, well lit, and I'd done it before. But that night I saw something in the street. A person lying motionless. My gut screamed to run, but I approached anyway. Then they sat up and stared at me. Before I could react, they lunged, sprinting with a knife, screaming, "I kill you!" Ah! I ran blindly into the park, barely escaping. I never told anyone. Years later, as an adult, I was camping alone after a bad breakup. I needed solitude. But when I arrived, 2 trucks were already parked nearby. I ignored it and set up camp downriver. Then I saw one of the men, fishing, but acting strange. He called out, claiming they were just shooting cans. But his tone was off. Later, I spotted him across the river. He waved, asked my name, then took my photo with a disposable camera before walking away. That night, footsteps circled my tent. I stepped out with my gun and found him there, holding an axe. I fired a warning shot. He mumbled something about his friend Ivan, saying he'd taken care of him. I forced him to drop the axe, took his shoes, and fled. I still don't know what happened to Ivan, but I'll never camp alone again. I drove through the night, shaking, my hands glued to the wheel. Every shadow on the roadside made my pulse spike. When I finally got home, I locked every door and sat in the dark, replaying his words. Took care of Ivan. The police took my statement, but nothing ever came of it. No missing persons reports matched, no bodies found. For weeks, I barely slept. Every creak in the house sent me reaching for my gun. I kept seeing his face. That blank, empty stare. Like he wasn't even human. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was just some unstable loner, and Ivan was an imaginary friend. Maybe the axe was for firewood. Maybe the photo was just some weird rural quirk, but deep down, I knew better. A year later, I was scrolling through local news when a headline caught my eye. Remains found near remote campsite. My stomach dropped. The article was vague. Just a few bones, scattered near a riverbank, no ID yet. But the location? The same stretch of wilderness where I'd camped. I closed the tab and never looked it up again. Some questions are better left unanswered. Now, I still love the outdoors, but I don't go alone. And I always trust my gut. Because the world's full of people who don't belong in it. And sometimes, they're closer than you think. Even now, years later, certain sounds still make my breath catch. The crunch of gravel underfoot, the snap of a twig in the woods, the hollow thud of an axe biting into wood. I moved to the city after that, thinking crowds would make me feel safer, but safety is an illusion. Last winter I was walking home from work when I noticed a man following me, not aggressively, just persistently. Same block, same pace. When I turned down a side street, he turned too. My pulse roared in my ears as I ducked into a 24-hour diner, watching through the fogged window as he slowed, then kept walking. The waitress asked if I was okay. I must have looked as pale as I felt. That's when I realized it never really leaves you. That primal awareness, the knowledge that monsters don't just live in the woods. They walk city streets, they sit in coffee shops, they smile at you from across the subway car. I carry pepper spray now. I check my locks 3 times before bed. And sometimes, when the power goes out during a storm, I still catch myself holding my breath, listening for footsteps that shouldn't be there. The truth is, you don't get over something like that. You just learn to live with the shadows, and you never ever let your guard down. The nightmares still come, sometimes. Not as often as they used to, but when they do, I wake up gasping. The scent of wet earth and gasoline suddenly thick in my bedroom. The echo of that awful screech ringing in my ears. My therapist says it's PTSD. I call it common sense. Last month I was cleaning out my closet when I found the old disposable hammer from that camping trip. I'd completely forgotten I'd taken it from the guy's jacket when I made him empty his pockets. The film was still inside. I almost threw it away. But curiosity won. The photo lab technician gave me a strange look when I dropped it off. "You know, these usually need bright light," he said, squinting at the faded exterior. "This one's been through hell." When I picked up the developed photos, my hands shook. The first few were just blurry shots of trees. Then came the one he took of me, my face, pale and startled across the river. But the last photo, a shallow grave, freshly dug, and beside it, a pair of work boots I recognized, the same ones the other fishermen had been wearing that day. I burned the photos in my kitchen sink, watched the edges curl black as the faces melted away. Some doors should stay closed. Some rivers should never be crossed twice. I still go camping, but now I take a dog, a big, loud German shepherd who sleeps with one ear always cocked. And when I hear footsteps in the night, I don't call out. I let him growl. Now, when I sit by the campfire, I keep my back to the thickest tree and face the open darkness. The flames cast long shadows that dance like figures just beyond the light's edge. My dog's ears twitch at sounds I'll never hear. His low growl the only warning I need. I learned the hard way that silence can be just as dangerous as noise. That's why I always leave the radio on now. Some talk station murmuring through the night. Not for company, for contrast. So when the static cuts out or the voices suddenly stop, I'll know something's wrong before I hear the footsteps. Last summer, I found fresh boot prints circling my tent at dawn. Not mine. Too big. The sheriff said it was probably just a hiker who got turned around, but I saw how his hand lingered near his gun when he examined the axe marks on the trees nearby. These days I camp with motion lights rigged around my sight, and when the wind howls through the pines, I don't wonder if it's the wind anymore. The world's full of empty spaces where bad things can happen unnoticed. I just make damn sure I'm never in one of them. Some lessons you only need to learn once. The forest doesn't forget. I learned that last autumn when I returned to the river bend. Not to camp, just to see it in daylight one last time. The ground where I'd pitched my tent was overgrown now, but the axe marks on the trees remained, healed over, but still visible like scars. My dog froze suddenly, hackles rising as he stared into the brush. That's when I saw it. A single gray work boot, weathered but unmistakable, half buried in the leaf litter. The mate to the pair in that damned photo. I didn't touch it, didn't invest. The gate, just turned and walked away, my dog pressing close against my leg the whole hike back. That night, I dreamed of Ivan for the first time, not as he might have looked in life, but as the forest had remade him, roots threading through ribcage, creek water murmuring through his hollow skull. In the dream, he wasn't angry, just lonely, waiting. I sold my camping gear the next week. Now, when I need solitude, I take day hikes, always on marked trails, always home before dusk. I've made peace with the fact that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some shadows never fully chased away. The wilderness keeps its secrets. And I've learned to let it. The city feels safer now, but not for the reasons you'd think. At least here, the dangers are familiar. Pickpockets, traffic, the occasional late-night weirdo. Nothing like the vast, swallowing silence of the woods, where anything could be watching from the tree line. I keep the curtains drawn at night, not because I'm afraid of what's outside, but because of what I might imagine seeing in the dark. The mind plays cruel tricks when left to wander down old, frightened pathways. My therapist says I should write an ending to that chapter of my life. But some stories don't have clean endings. Just slow fade-outs, like a campfire reduced to embers. The axe marks on those trees will outlast me. The river will keep whispering its secrets to anyone reckless enough to listen. And somewhere out there, a lone work boot rots back into the earth, waiting to be found by some other unlucky soul. I've made my peace with the unknown. These days, when I hear a strange noise at night, I take a deep breath and let it go. The world is full of monsters, real and imagined. The trick is learning which ones are worth running from. The truth is, we all carry our own monsters with us. Mine just happen to wear muddy boots and leave footprints where they shouldn't be. I took up urban exploration last year. Abandoned factories, old subway tunnels, the skeletons of forgotten places. People think it's dangerous, but there's comfort in concrete and steel. These ruins have human fingerprints. You can trace their histories in rusted machinery and peeling wallpaper. Not like the woods. The woods remember nothing and forget nothing. Last month I found an old newspaper in one of those abandoned buildings. A small article about unidentified remains found near a popular hiking trail. No names, no photos, just 2 sentences buried between a car accident and a city council meeting. I left the paper where I found it. Some stories aren't ours to follow to their endings. I still wake sometimes to the sound of rain against my apartment windows, and for one disorienting moment, I'm back in that tent, listening for footsteps in the downpour. Then the heater kicks on. A caw or honks outside and the present rushes back in. The past never really leaves us, it just learns to whisper instead of scream. The whispers grew louder last winter when a backpacker disappeared near that same river bend. News reports showed search teams combing through familiar stands of pine, their flashlights cutting through the dusk like I'd remember doing all those years ago. They found his tent collapsed but intact, his belongings still inside. No signs of struggle. Just gone. I didn't sleep for 3 nights after seeing the news footage. My dog, older now, his muzzle gone gray, kept nudging my hand with his wet nose until I finally broke down sobbing into his fur. He remembers too, I think. Animals don't forget fear like humans try to. The missing hiker's sister reached out after finding an old forum post I'd made about my experience. We met for coffee in a brightly lit diner, her hand shaking around the mug as she asked questions I couldn't answer. "I just need to know if it was quick," she kept saying. "If he suffered." I lied and told her it was probably an animal attack. Some truths help no one. These days, I take sleeping pills when the rain gets heavy. The doctor says it's a crutch, but crutches exist for a reason. My nightmares have developed new variations now. Sometimes it's me in that grave. Sometimes it's the sister. Sometimes faceless figures standing just beyond the firelight's reach. I've started leaving my porch light on, all need ever take. Not for safety. So whatever's out there knows I'm still watching too. The sister's name was Claire. She started texting me updates whenever the search teams found anything. A shredded piece of clothing, a water bottle half buried in mud. Each message felt like picking at a half-healed wound. Then one rainy Tuesday night she called. Voice raw, words tumbling over each other. "They found his journal." The pages described a man watching his campsite. A figure with yellowish skin like old paper, who left strange gifts. A dead rabbit, a bundle of sticks tied with fishing line. The last entry was just 2 words. "He's here." I drove to Claire's apartment that night. We sat on her fire escape in the drizzle, passing a bottle of whiskey back and forth as she read me passages in a hollow voice. "You never mentioned gifts," she said. I took a long swallow. My guy wasn't the gift-giving type. The silence stretched between us, filled with things neither of us wanted to say aloud. That there might be more of them out there. That the woods have always hidden things. That her brother was probably dead in some shallow grave, slowly becoming part of the forest that took him. At dawn, she showed me the journal's last page. A crude sketch of a face with hollow eyes and a smile too wide for human lips. "I need you to take me there," she said. I thought about the axe marks on the trees, the single work boot, the way my dog still whined when we passed, hiking trails. "No," I told her. "Some places don't let go of what wanders in." The rain kept falling. Somewhere, beyond the city, lights. The woods were swallowing another secret. Claire stopped texting after that. I like to think she moved on, but I know better. The rain kept falling for 3 straight weeks after that conversation with Claire. I'd lie awake listening to it drum against the windows, imagining it washing through those distant woods, eroding creek banks, filling animal tracks, slowly blurring the edges of whatever might still be hidden there. Then came the flood. News helicopters showed the river swollen beyond its banks, swallowing the bend where I'd camped, where the hiker had disappeared. Uprooted trees tumbled in the brown water like matchsticks. When the waters receded, they found bones. Too many bones, Some old, some new, some that didn't quite match human anatomy. The anthropologist quoted in the paper used careful phrases like unusual skeletal modifications and ritualistic placement. The article didn't mention the sketch from the journal, didn't describe how the longest bones had been arranged in spiral patterns like spokes radiating from central points. Claire called me the day they confirmed one set was her brother's. "It's over," she said, but her voice sounded hollow, the way mine gets when I lie. I went to the morgue. Identification with her? The coroner's assistant, a pockmarked kid who looked too young for the job, kept glancing at a separate evidence bag on his desk. When I looked closer, I saw why. A disposable camera. The kind that doesn't need batteries. The kind that keeps working even after years buried in damp earth. They developed the film last week. I haven't slept since. The first photo shows Claire's brother smiling by his tent. The next 23 are just black. But the final frame? It's me. Younger. Asleep in my tent that terrible night, and standing over me, barely visible in the flash's glare, something with too many joints in its fingers. The camera's timestamp says the photo was taken 15 minutes before I woke to footsteps circling my tent, before I ever heard the axe. The police think it's some kind of hoax. But Claire and I? We know better. Some forests grow hungry, and some hungers don't stay buried. The camera sits in an evidence locker now, tagged and forgotten. The official report called it an unexplained anomaly, and moved on to more pressing cases. But Claire and I, we can't move on. We meet every Thursday at a diner off the highway, poring over maps and news clippings like detectives chasing a ghost. Her apartment walls are papered with missing persons reports. Hikers, hunters, children who wandered too far from backyard barbecues. Too many disappearances near wooded areas. Too many cases closed with shrugs. "They're still out there," she whispers, her fingers tracing river lines on the map. "All of them." Last month, we drove to the flood zone at dawn. The river had carved new channels through the earth, exposing things long buried. A rusted pocket knife, a child's sneaker, a deer skull wrapped in fishing line. Claire pocketed the knife. I left the rest. As we turned to leave, my phone buzzed. A notification from a hiking forum I'd joined years ago. A new post from a user named Ivan_1987. "Found something you lost." Attached was a photo of a single work boot, freshly dug up, the laces still tied. The timestamp showed it was taken 10 minutes prior, from exactly where we were standing. We ran to the car so fast, Claire left her jacket behind. The keys shook in my hands as I peeled onto the highway. Neither of us spoke until the trees faded in the rear view. Now, my phone keeps getting texts from unknown numbers. Just coordinates, always near wooded areas. I block each one. Claire says we should investigate, but some doors, once opened, can't be closed. And some things don't just want to be found, they want to be fed. The rain's picking up again tonight. My dog is growling at the back door. And Claire just sent me a photo of fresh footprints leading to her porch, the left boot missing. The footprints ended at Claire's welcome mat. Just stopped, like whoever made them had vanished into thin air. But the photo she sent showed something else. A single wet handprint on her storm door, fingers too long, the palm oddly segmented. I called her immediately, no answer. Drove there in the pouring rain with my old revolver in the glove box. Found her front door ajar, television still on, a half-drunk cup of tea steaming on the coffee table. Her phone lay in the kitchen counter, open to her text thread. The last message wasn't from me. "Come find us." Attached was a new photo. The missing left boot from the floodplain, now placed neatly beside its mate. Between them sat Claire's favorite necklace, the silver compass pendant her brother gave her. Police found her car 3 days later, parked at a trailhead 50 miles north. The driver's seat was adjusted for someone much taller. Muddy footprints led into the woods. They stopped after 20 yards. I sit in my living room now with every light blazing, staring at my own phone. A new message arrived an hour ago. Just a string of coordinates, deep in state forest land, and a single word, soon. My dog won't stop whining. The rain won't stop falling. And somewhere out there, the trees are whispering Claire's name. I load the revolver. Some hunts don't end until someone stops running. Tonight, I think I finally understand. We were never the hunters, just the prey. My phone buzzes again. Do you look? The buzzing won't stop. I stare at the phone vibrating across my kitchen table like some live thing. The screen lights up. Unknown caller. Then goes dark. Then lights up again. 3 rings. 4. My dog lets out a low, shuddering whine and crawls under the couch. On the 5th ring, I swipe answer but say nothing. The line crackles with distant static, the kind you only hear in deep woods where cell signals struggle. Then, breathing, ragged, wet, like someone or something just surfaced from underwater. A voice whispers 2 words before the call drops. Bring Ivan. The coordinates arrive 30 seconds later. Not just numbers this time. A map pin dropped right where the flood exposed those bones. Right where we found the boot. Rain lashes the windows as I check the revolver. 6 rounds. 1 for each year this nightmare has haunted me. The phone buzzes again. Another text. A photo of Claire's compass pendant, hanging from a pine branch. The needle spinning wildly, despite being perfectly still. I should call the police. I should stay inside. I should... But then I remember Claire's face when she said, "They're still out there," with that terrible hope in her eyes. My jacket zipper sounds deafening in the quiet house. The front door creaks like it's protesting. Somewhere beyond the streetlights, the hungry dark waits. And tonight, I'm done running. The engine turns over. The headlights cut through the rain. Somewhere ahead, the trees part like a grinning mouth. The story isn't over, but this chapter ends here. The tires crunch over gravel as I turn onto the Forest Service road. The headlights illuminating sheets of rain and the occasional glint of animal eyes in the undergrowth. The revolver sits heavy in my lap. The coordinates blink on my dashboard GPS. 500 yards now. I roll down the window. The smell of wet earth and pine floods in, undercut by something older, darker, like turned soil and rust. My phone lights up one last time. No message. Just a photo taken seconds ago. My truck's interior from outside the driver's side window. The flash reflects in my wide, terrified eyes. The engine dies. The woods go silent. And from the tree line, something steps into the road. Not human. Not anymore. The last thing I hear before the gunshot is the sound of my own voice, whispering, "Ivan sends his regards. Horan."